Hello again, you're watching Today on eNCA, DSTV channel 403 with me, Dan Moyane. Thanks for joining us. Now, the aviation industry was hit hard by the global COVID pandemic as restrictions halted both domestic and international travel. Most airlines managed to take to the skies again after the restrictions were lifted, but one expert says the industry's recovery may not be as good as it seems at the moment. The Vice President of the Africa region at Qatar Airways, Hendrik, joins us now to give us more insight. He's talking to us this hour virtually from Doha, the capital of Qatar. Hendrik, good afternoon. Welcome to Today, and thank you very much for your time and your patience this afternoon. Is this talk about a recovery that's happening in the travel, especially air travel industry, a reality on the ground that you are seeing? Or are you guys too much optimistic, over-optimistic?
Hi, good afternoon, Dan. I don't think we're over-optimistic. Obviously, the last 3 years have been quite challenging, and I think the airline industry has been one of the industries that was hardest hit. But we've seen some really good recovery over the last year and a half, 12 months especially. If you look at the latest statistics that was released by IATA some weeks ago, they say that the global air travel is about 96% back to pre-pandemic levels. And what we've seen in Africa, we're roughly about 85 to 87% to pre-pandemic levels. So, there's been a significant build-up. Year-on-year growth has also been significant. Comparing to a year ago, we're about 30% up to last year, the same period. So it looks quite optimistic at this stage.
What's contributing to this optimistic rebound?
I think initially what happened, there was a lot of pent-up demand of people that couldn't travel during the pandemic, that then, there was a need for them to either go visit family and friends, and then shortly after that, we saw a big rebound in the leisure travel industry, people wanting to go on holiday. Someone that was stuck in their house for maybe 12 months, really wanted to get out. So if we look at Southern Africa, we've seen the natural flows back to the east, Phuket, Bali, Maldives, and then to Europe as well. We saw over the summer holidays in Europe, there was some demand, and we expect the same going into the European winter, people going on skiing holidays and that. And then lastly, the corporate travel industry is probably the one that's taken the longest to start the rebound, but we've also started seeing some pockets on that. There's certain aspects in the corporate travel that it just has to be on site. If you think about mining, your oil and gas industries and those, you physically have to have skilled specialists on site, and we've seen all of that start picking up again.
Yeah. Let's come closer home to yourselves at Qatar Airways. I mean, you've been expanding apparently on an ambitious basis on our continent. You said the recovery of the airline industry in Africa in particular, where we are, is about at 86% of the levels pre the COVID-19 pandemic. There's still a nice big gap there of 14% in terms of that. What's contributing to what you are making in terms of the investment in the air travel industry on our continent? Why being so bold?
Africa's always been a very strategic market for Qatar Airways. Specifically, if you look at that, Africa constitutes about 17.5% of the world population, but only 2% of the traveling population of the world. So there's always been a big gap for air travel, specifically in and out of Africa and within Africa. And then during the pandemic, we saw some good opportunities where a lot of airlines stopped flying. We never stopped flying, and we used that opportunity to, at the same time, add some new destinations to our network. So during COVID, we added 8 new destinations into Africa. We've consolidated some, and then we've also added capacity. We had that ability to increase our capacity. And one of the main reasons was the fact that we never stopped flying. We got a lot of learnings early on during the pandemic, from a safety perspective, how to travel people safely. And we worked with a lot of governments to repatriate their citizens either back home in either direction. So I think those learnings and the opportunities that we saw helped us to sustain our growth in Africa.
Yeah, in terms of your plans at Qatar Airways, where does South Africa fit? I mean, you yourself come from these shores.
Yes, South Africa's always been a strategic market. It's been the dominant economic powerhouse down south, so it's always been very strategic. There's quite a big population of South Africans that do travel in and out, and as you all know, there's a lot of global companies that also have their regional offices headquartered down there. So South Africa's always been very strategic for us. We also work quite closely with a lot of airline partners down in South Africa. I always say, I want to make it as easy as possible for someone to travel. If they need to go from Uppington to Paris to go to the World Cup right now, we have that ability to offer them that service.
Yeah. Now, what do you think should be done to fast-track the move towards accessible air transport? But also, when you talk accessibility, you also think of affordability. The economy being what it is locally and globally, with inflation rising everywhere. What do you think must be done?
I think specifically talking about Africa, for that matter, there's been a lot of infrastructure development that happened over the last few years, with new airports being built. But I think a lot of the barriers that we're still facing is the cost of doing business, just overall some of the legislation, the taxes that is imposed on air travel that makes it very expensive. You don't necessarily see the same in other parts of the world. And I think, the more competition there is, that will obviously drive an increase in demand, and, that again has a direct impact on the pricing.
Yeah. Just a final question to you, Hendrik. You've declared a profit at Qatar Airways recently from the previous financial year. What was the secret to your business overall? I mean, if your peers, your competitors are listening and wondering, how are you achieving success so quickly after the pandemic?
Again, Dan, I think it just boils back to what I said earlier, the fact that we didn't stop flying. So a lot of our competitors grounded their fleet completely during COVID. We never grounded our fleet, so the fact that we had the ability to scale up as quickly as we did gave us quite a good advantage. At the same time, it was not an overnight success. Qatar Airways was established in 1997, and there's been a lot of resilience that the company showed over the years that helped us, just grow that quickly. Last year we also hosted the FIFA World Cup here in Qatar, and there's a number of sport events. Just this last weekend, we hosted the Qatar F1 Grand Prix that was here. So all of these that contribute to the country and to the growth of the airline.
Okay, thank you very much for your time this afternoon here today on eNCA. That's Hendrik du Preez. He's the Vice President for the Africa region at Qatar Airways.